Welcome, everybody. My name is David Smith, and I would like to take you through my presentation today on better incident management using lean IT thinking. The concept here is really looking at ways to improve the quality to your customers by identifying waste and eliminating it in order to improve efficiency and the overall speed of execution of your incident management process. So, to tell you a little bit about me, my name is David Smith. I'm the president of Micromation Incorporated. I'm in Canada, close to the Greater Toronto area, and my background is really IT service management. I've been in that space for over 30 years and spent a lot of time with ITIL and Lean, total cost of ownership, and ISO. I've actually managed many service centers, help desks. The incident management process I'm very familiar with, and also worked with many systems integrators. So I have lots of horror stories and wounds and scars to reflect some of the learnings that I've gone through over the years. But what I wanted to do today was to share some of the great things that I did discover as a learning process and using things like Lean. And so I'd like to start with a story, and the story is a real story about Jill. Jill was a program manager who was very successful in improving services for the Ontario public service space. In Canada, we have provinces, and specifically each province is managed by its own provincial government. And in this particular case, Jill was a program manager who was tasked with, pretty challenging area of improving the incident management process. And here's kind of what happened. A number of years ago, they decided that they had too many IT departments and that it made sense to kind of group them together into more of a streamlined organization. So consolidation was what this was all about. So they took a number of areas and merged them all together, and specifically the one that we're going to talk about is all to do with support and the service desk that was involved in supporting frontline, I'll say taxpayers, people that were using the provincial services, and it could be things like driver's license renewals. It could be getting, updated birth certificates or things of that nature. These are services that are provided to our citizens. So in delivering these services and consolidating them together, mass chaos happened, as you can imagine. People weren't sure what they were supposed to work on. Things were confusing. There was new organizations in place. So it was very confusing and chaotic in the early stages of this improvement or intended improvement. So this is where Jill comes into play. Jill puts together a team, and the objective of the team is to improve the experience of the user of the service desk so that when they call in, they get a better experience and they get resolved or they get the service that they're looking for. And how she did this is the team looked at creating a repeatable methodology that they could go in and take a look at, where specifically are the challenges in the incident management process. And it wasn't just incident at that time, it was also service requests as well. But the whole intent was to improve the effectiveness of first line and second line support processes so that people knew what they were supposed to do and could do them efficiently and effectively, and ultimately improving the experience of getting the service that you were seeking when you called the service desk. So as you can see, Jill's team was very small. There's me. I was on the team myself and a part of this. And here's kind of what we did. The first step was we had to step back and look at developing a strategy. The strategy really involved cataloging and classifying who were our customers and which services did they use, and as a result of that, which groups were more vulnerable or at risk as a result of not getting good service. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to prioritize and work on the high-value services in order to meet customers' expectations and make getting service a more pleasant experience for them. So the first part was all figuring out, who's the customer and which services were most important. And as a result of that, we kind of developed a strategy and a roadmap on how we were going to tackle this. And we ended up deciding that it was best to tackle it by service. And a service really was, as I had mentioned before, could be somebody wanting to renew their driver's license or get a fishing license or register a birth certificate, etc. So the next step was we needed a method to actually measure and control the progress that we were going to go through, because we wanted to identify and prove that we actually made things better. So the first thing we had to do is we had to instrument these services and put metrics in place and roll them up through scorecards and dashboards and show, here's what it looks like as is, the service, how well it operated, and then be able to track it over time to make sure that it was tracking and trending in the right direction, but also using it that if anything went off track, we could very quickly correct these and modify our course of action. So that was the purpose of the controls and the measurements that we were putting in play. The next stage was we had to look at, what makes up a service? And, what are these enabling factors that make a service work? It was a whole bunch of things. It was like people, there were, technologies, there were software applications, there was infrastructure, networks. It was, fairly complex. Most of these services are delivered using an IT support system of such. So to facilitate that, we used a tool called Failure Mode and Effect Analysis, or FMEA for short. And this is a great tool for actually dissecting or decomposing a service and breaking it down into its smaller parts, and then identifying, how do we support those particular components, and how does this whole thing come together, and what are the patterns that are involved in recognizing that there is an issue with a service, and who are the right people to get involved, and what are the right prescriptive actions based on symptoms that different individuals throughout the support value chain, first line, second line, third line, get involved, and how do they more effectively use this information. So we took this failure mode and effect analysis and sort of reverse engineered the service to break it down to its parts, figure out the best support patterns, what kind of knowledge records were required, and based on this symptom and this identifying information, what's the best way to support this. And so these were the enabling factors that were identified by service. And then from that, we moved to the next stage and we said, what are the barriers or gaps or the issues that are preventing these, enabling factors from doing a good job? So it was things like, we need the right people, they got to have the right skills, we need to have the right instrumentation, a good process to make sure that when things come in, it flows, uninterrupted, that people don't have to wait for things, and that if things do go off track, that there's, people are escalated or notified, and that detection methods were in place and that we could measure each step of the experience as customers went through the incident management process. Now, all of this was figured out at a level that worked with the individuals who were actually providing these services, so they worked with us to identify the best ways to do this. So we all worked as a big team to do this, and when we were finished, we kind of got everybody to sign off, and all the stakeholders agreed and attested that, this was the right way and the best way that we could actually deal with these challenges. And then we actually had to roll up our sleeves and do the heavy lifting. This is where we had to actually implement and put this better, new, improved incident management process in place, and we did that through initiatives. And initiatives, in this case, were fairly simple. They were really, a lot of it was coaching and training. So training our help desk agents, look for these symptoms. If you see this, here's an information source called knowledge records, and you find this information in a technical service catalog, which was related to the business catalog. So all this stuff was documented, and educated and rolled out service by service, and we called this like a service activation. And we rolled them out one at a time, and then we observed, the change, and we measured, and anything that didn't go to plan, we were quick to adjust and make improvements. So we had a continual improvement mechanism built into it. So that was the method that we used, and as a result, the level of service significantly increased, and we had the proof to show it increase, and we had just amazing reports that we could run and show that this improvement that we did. So as a result of this method, it was something that we repeated many times, and we did it on a whole bunch of services over a very short period of time. And now this is just a way of life. I mean, our team went away, but it became the way of doing business, and all services now are measured and run using this pattern, this improvement methodology. So that kind of gives you real context as to today's agenda and what I'm going to take you through, because this was using lean principles. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what is lean, why are organizations looking at using this, and how does it actually work? So, what is the method that works? And it's really, maximizing customer value by minimizing waste. And we're going to talk a lot about what is waste, and specifically, I'm going to refer to waste in the context of incident management. I'm going to talk a little bit about the principles of lean and take you through, things like the voice of the customer. I'm going to talk about value streams, flow, pull, perfection. And then I'm going to actually show you what the incident management process looks like from a value stream perspective. And this is a technique that we use in lean to figure out, what should we measure. And as a result of that, I'm going to show you what I believe are the really important metrics that you want to pay attention to in managing and measuring the incident management process. And then I'm going to show you some other tools that you can take a look at if you want to learn more and get better adapt to this. So the first part, I'm going to run a couple of votes here. And the first one is, let's find out who in our audience, what best describes your role. So I'm going to start up my voting tool here. If you wouldn't mind just plopping in a little bit about, what best describes your role, so I can understand who is in the audience. Okay, got the thing running. Got votes coming in. I'll give it a couple of more seconds. Okay, I'm going to stop it here, and let's view the results. So we can see we've got consulting people. We've got a group of other people, and service desk manager. Okay, so consultative. Okay, great. There's some great consultative techniques that we can cover with you. Now, I would like to do one more vote here, if you wouldn't mind. And that is to see what your experience is with lean. Just want to see how many people are lean-oriented already and how much time I will need to spend there. So if you could try and tell me, are you a lean expert, or have you practiced it before, or do you know a little bit about it, or maybe you have no experience whatsoever? Perfect. Okay, I've got votes coming in. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to view the results. Let's see. Perfect. Okay, I think I've got just the right slides for you. Okay. The 79% know a little bit about lean, but they want to know more. Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's jump into it. What's lean all about? Okay. So lean it's really a way of thinking and acting. And if I put down the basics, it's all about customer value. So the number one item is to look at things through the lens of the customer and what they think is important. Actually, value can be somewhat measured by things that the customer would pay for. Now, this is in the context of eliminating waste. So what we want to do is find ways to remove the activities that we do that customers don't perceive as value. That's what we call as waste. Management is a facilitator in this case, and they facilitate the improvement process by getting heavy employee involvement, because really the innovation comes from the employees, the people that are customer facing, and the context is continually trying to improve and perfect what it is that you do to deliver the value to your customers. So that's sort of the context, big picture. Lean came from manufacturing. It originally came from car manufacturing and the Toyota production system. So this came, many, many years ago, and in learning the techniques that were made Toyota one of the I think they're number 2 or 3 in the world now in terms of car manufacturing. There was a lot of great things that they learned, and it was the ability to use scarce resources and focus on customer value by minimizing things that don't, the waste that doesn't contribute to that. And these same principles apply to the service sector and products. So that's why we're seeing adoption of this not only in IT but in many different service sectors. And this has become very popular in the last, I would say, 10 years, where we're seeing this spread all over the place. Logistics companies, distribution companies, the service sector, retail, healthcare. Everybody is adopting and learning some of these better practices and techniques and applying them. And why not IT? I mean, we can benefit from this as well. So the reasons for being lean is basically, if I use sort of the balanced scorecard approach here, customers, they want high value for good cost, and they want a good experience. And if we do that well, then customers are loyal and they'll want to work with us and stay with our services. So very attractive to provide high value capabilities to our customers. Now, if we do that well, the way that we need to do it is we need to take our processes and make them very high quality. So it's right time, first time, every time, very short lead times with minimal waste, and so that we can get things, to market very quickly. And as a result of doing that, our financial aspect, how much does it cost? Well, our costs reduce, and as a result of that, we can lower our price to our customers and provide, a better, more attractive cost effectiveness value proposition. And at the same time, it's heavily involved with the employees, so there's huge job satisfaction and this sense of self-worth and growth, and people get really motivated and thrilled about doing this. So it's really good for the employees. So all of these benefits make this such a compelling, great way of improving what it is that you do. So I'd like to now jump into giving you specific examples of some of the things that we talked about, like waste. What do we mean by waste? And specifically in terms of incident management, what does this look like? Well, just as recent as this last week, I was sitting on a service desk myself trying to get a support for something, and it's very frustrating sitting on hold, waiting for somebody to pick up. You finally get an agent, and they take your information, and then they put you on hold again because they couldn't help you. And then I got dropped off, and then I had to call back in, and then I had to give the information again, and then had to wait for some more time, then get someone else, and I'm being bounced around all over the place. Now, maybe this doesn't happen in your service desk and your incident management processes, but a lot of times, like, this happens, and if you need support for your phone, for your for your banking or whatever, I mean, these issues still happen. And then finally, when you do get the right person, it isn't necessarily there, because then there's things behind the scenes that necessarily I don't see as the customer, but it certainly have the effect. It takes a long time for me to get the service, and the reason for that is often behind the scenes there is a case where things are bouncing around and not necessarily getting to the right people. There's a backlog, and so I'm sitting in a queue waiting for my turn. Sometimes there's a rash of firefighting for repeat issues, wrong diagnosis, what they thought was the issue wasn't really the issue, so they had to go back and re-diagnose it. Sometimes the fix or the repair or whatever, it didn't work, and they had to redo it. And so all of these things are what we consider waste. And these are just examples that, I still see all the time. So if we step back, Lean has a way of categorizing these, and there's 3 types of waste. I see that I've got some questions in, and I'm just going to bear in mind, if you do have questions, please put them into your type them in, and I will address them at the end of the session here. But the 3 types of waste in Lean, now there's some Japanese terms here that you'll start to hear, but Muda, Mura, Muri are the 3 types of waste. And essentially what we're referring to is items that are considered totally unnecessary and they don't add any value. In other words, the customer would not pay for this because it doesn't make sense, and like weighting or defects, they don't want to pay for it. Incidentally, the incident management process is something that overall customers, like incidents, are considered waste because they're defects, and I'll get to that in a minute. But another type of waste is variation or variance in terms of the quality or the throughput of how fast things get through the process. And then the last one, Muri, is all about inflexibility or being overburdened. And that's whereby maybe we don't have the right resources or the right resource mix, or we have maybe policies that restrict our ability to deliver good services. So these are just classification schemes that we categorize the different types of waste. Now we further break it down. We say, there's different kinds of activities that we do in the customer's eyes, some of which they consider value add. In other words, the customer would willingly pay for them. And here's examples of development, operations, delivery, advice. Customers are willing to pay for that. But then there's another category called necessary but non-value adding, and that's a case whereby customers will, we have to do it. We have to hire people. We've got to do our accounting. We have to test applications. But this is something that isn't, valuable in terms of the customer. And then we have the pure waste, which is the Muda, Muri, and Mura. And these are the things where, unnecessarily doing activities that don't lend value. So how does Lean, how do we maximize customer value by minimizing waste? Well, the goal is remove non-value items. That's the things that customers don't want to pay for. Reduce the necessary non-value add and optimize the value add. So that's the secret to how to make this work. And to map this out, if you took any process and laid it out and looked at all the activities, and this one's color-coded, and it just shows you that the green is good. Customers like to pay for the green stuff. But the gray and the red are things that the customer wouldn't be willing to pay for, and the white things are waiting. It's work is idle. It's stuck. It's stuck in a queue. And if we add up how much time is spent on things that are the work versus the overall lead time, which includes the waiting, you can see that the actual work time versus the overall throughput, there's a significant difference in most cases in many of the processes. So that's what we aim to improve and perfect. And how we do that is using Lean principles. And here are some of the basic Lean principles. First of all, we focus on the center, and it's, what does the customer value? What's important to them? And the next step is to look at, well, what is it that we're doing that actually produces the value? We refer to this as the value stream. It's like the activities, or in ITIL, and we always think of it as like the process, but it's a little bit at a higher level. And then we look at, well, how easy does that process flow, and how does it deal with peak workloads and high and low workload volumes, and how quickly do things go through that? So that's the concept of throughput. And then the trigger process, what is it that actually triggers demand, and how do we pull work through our process and make sure that it doesn't get stuck or bottlenecked or sitting in a queue? And that's the concept of pull. And then finally, how do we improve this and perfect it and continually look at making it error-proof right from the beginning, so that it's always right the first time, every time that you do it, as opposed to having to repeat. So these are the main characteristics of Lean. So I'm going to take you through some examples. So let's take a look at it what do customers value? Here's an example of products and services and some key characteristics. Like on the service side, customers value that you have competence, that you're reliable, that what you do is accurate and it works and it's timely, and that you're responsive, and that they have access to you, and you're courteous, and you communicate well, and you're credible, and that you have understanding for what it needs to be done, and it's all for a good price. Now, if I take that and build something called a critical to quality tree, this is a technique where we take and say what's important to the customer, and we start breaking it down by these areas, we can drill down and start to look at, well, what does a customer care about when they need support or when they need an incident or something fixed? Well, their experience is predicated by how easy it was to access your service. Was there a cost to it? Were you responsive to getting to them? Did you resolve the issue in a timely fashion? And was it reliable? Did the fix work? And ultimately, incidents to them are waste to begin with. So this is an unpleasant experience from the get-go. So our job is to take this unpleasant experience and make sure that it goes through and it's clean and it's effective. So breaking these down further, we can see that we want to actually pay attention to things that make us courteous and that we are understanding, and that we do pay attention to the cost per incident, and that we are paying attention to the cycle time and how long we wait, and how long the overall throughput of the process, like lead time, and other things like TAC-T. TAC-T is one I'll cover in a second, and percent complete and accurate. These are measures that are very relevant to the process. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, let's decompose the incident process. And if you have an ITIL background, most of you, I think, are consultants, so you're probably going to recognize this chart. But you can see from left to right, this is the basic anatomy of the incident process. We can see incident comes in. It took a certain amount of time to actually detect that we even had an incident, and then there's a response time to actually get to the point where we can actually diagnose what it is, repair it, recover the system, and then restore it to its original state. And then there's a wait time until the next incident occurs. And there's very traditional measures that we've seen, like MTTR and MTBF and MTBSI. Those are the technical terms that we refer to certain measurements in the incident process. But how does this relate to a customer? Well, they relate to things like how easy was it to access your system, your support, how much is it going to cost me? They're already upset that their service broke, and now if they have to pay for something like this is going to even make them more upset. But certainly how responsive you are in getting started on this and understanding what the issue is and being able to diagnose the issue and then resolve it and get it up and running, and that's the timeliness factor. And then there's the notion of reliability, and that's like how often does this thing break, and how good was it when hopefully it didn't repeat and they had to bring it back because it wasn't resolved the first time. Now, if I simplify that, and this is where I'm using lean techniques and specifically a tool that we call the value stream, that can be very simply put into like 4 major activities. One is the registration process, is where the customer engages with us and we get the details of what the issue is and what the symptoms are. And then the next stage is diagnosis, and that's where we try and determine, well, what's the cause and what might be the cost involved in this. Then we get into the actual repair. This is where we look at, is this something that we can fix, or do we have to replace something? And then finally, restoration, and that's how do we get it back to its in working order and to the state where the customer needs it to be, and verifying and testing it. So this is a very simplified set of activities called the value stream. Now, we use another tool in Lean called value stream mapping. It's very powerful. It is where we can actually see what's going on in your incident management process. And you can see that there's all kinds of data in here, and I'm going to kind of give you a very quick run-through of this. But you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, we have a customer who has an issue that they would call the service desk to get support. In this case, it's an incident, and this is the incident process that we're focused on. And then we have resources, which specifically in this case are IT resources like help desk agents, first line, second line, third line support people, who are now going to take the customer through that process. They're going to register and get the details. They're going to diagnose and find out, what's going on, what's the root cause, and then they're going to repair and then eventually restore that and bring it back to the customer. So that is the cycle that we're going to go through. These boxes have little numbers in them, and some of these numbers are now we're getting into the measurement system. So boxes like here we can see standard time. That's how, in an ideal state, how long each activity should take. And this is not with any waste involved, but it's the ideal. It's like the utopia. But then you'll notice that we've got these other squiggly lines down the bottom, and they show, well, what's the actual time that it takes to get this registration process done on average? And how much time do things sit in a queue waiting before it can go to the next stage? And then how much time do we spend doing diagnosis? And then how much time does it wait until we can get to it and actually repair it? And then finally, how long does it take to repair it and then sit until we can restore it? And then we add up all these time frames, and what we get is the cycle time. And cycle time is the actual time that we are doing things, be it waste or not. And the overall lead time is how long did it take to get it through the entire process, including cycle time plus waste. We can do a calculation on that and determine what the process cycle efficiency is. Most cases, you'll find if you were to do this exercise, that you'll find that the efficiency is probably not very high, and it tends to be in the low percentile area. Now, some other percentages you'll notice in here is one's called percent complete and accurate, and you'll see all these little gray loop backs. Often what happens is we receive work at a certain stage, and there's something incomplete about it, and we have to go back upstream and find out, hey, there's a piece of missing information. It doesn't describe what the symptoms are, or there was, who's the customer, or there's something missing, so they can't complete it and they have to go back. Or sometimes we have to repeat the processes because we didn't get it right the first time. So that's what all these loops are that are feeding back, and that's, in some cases, the waste that's involved that's preventing us from doing this. Now, why am I telling you this? Is because the waste is in here. It's up to us to go find that waste, eliminate it, in order to reduce the wait times. Because what happens is the more your backlog builds up, the further behind we fall, and either we have to hire more people or the customer is going to be more delayed. So this is a highly balanced and tuned system that everything is interacting with each other. So that's why it's important to kind of look at this level of detail. And if we look at how we do it today, find those waste areas and facilitate our way through this by getting, the people involved and looking at how to improve this, we can create a future state vision by improving things one little step at a time and making improvements and putting a stake in the ground and making this better. Why would we want to do that? Because we want to increase our customer satisfaction and keep them coming back to us. We do this by improving the quality of the process, by reducing the lead time, which reduces the waste that consumes our IT resources, and as a result of that, makes it lower cost, and everybody gets, huge satisfaction and a boost in morale for doing something good. So the lean metrics that are important in this particular view, and I'm only showing you just the high level. There's a whole bunch of other ones that actually measure the waste itself, but the first one is TAC-T time. TAC-T is the heartbeat of the process. Another name for it is mean time between system incidents. You may know it by that. But it is the pace in which every so many minutes we might receive an incident in the door. Why is this important? If we don't make our process in such a way with the right number of resources in order to keep pace with what comes in the door, i.e. demand, then either we'll build a backlog of work in progress, which means that we're falling behind and work builds up and throughput goes down. Or if we're too good and we have more people, then we end up with having people sitting on the bench or FTEs sitting around idle, and that's not good either. So it needs to be balanced, and TAC-T time is an important measure. Another important measure is lead time. How long does it take from the very first request through to the final delivery of the final result, or the repaired system in this case? Now, another couple of important measures are, as you get into the actual activities themselves, the cycle time is the time we actually spend working on the product or the service. The wait time is how much time we spend waiting for the next activity. Often this is where backlogs and bottlenecks are evident. And then another one is the percent accurate and complete, or percent complete and accurate. And this is, how much of the time is the work actually usable as is, or if not, we have to go back upstream and find out what's missing. Okay, so here are the formulas for how to compute that. And, I've concluded the presentation deck here for your download, so I won't go through this in detail, but these are how you actually calculate these particular percentage and metrics. And what I want to kind of finalize here is, what do you do with your freed capacity? If you go through this and tackle this and make things better, here's some of the things that you can do with your additional time that you've got on your hands and the resources. Well, one is that you can absorb additional work with your increased staff, because now you have staff that are not doing things that are wasteful. If you're paying overtime, you can stop contract time contractors. You can get rid of them. Also, work that's or outsourced, you can bring that back in-house. You can create a better work-life balance, slow down, stop, think, use your time to innovate, create new revenue streams, maybe conduct more continuous improvement activities. So you can get to know your customers better, build stronger relationships with your suppliers, take time to better coach your staff and mentor staff to create growth opportunities, cross-train people for better job satisfaction, get caught up with your work, and build better relationships with other departments, and overall possibly reduce the payroll through natural attrition. So lots of things that you can do with the newfound resources. So how do you learn more? First of all, Lean is now a certification scheme, and if you've gone through any ITIL training, and there's the great path there, but there's an organization now called Lean IT Association, LITA. They are putting these standards in place, and this is all recognized certification classes, and they have a growth path that you can start with a foundations level and then move into more sophisticated, what they call Lean Kaizen. That's being able to do root cause analysis, and then leadership and coaching classes. And these points that you get for certification also contribute to your ITIL certification. So this foundation, these classes now are, Foundations is a 2-day course. Just like ITIL, there's a closed book format, and you need a certain amount to pass. There's also a slimmed down version of this. We offer a training course called Lean CSI, and that's applying Lean principles to the CSI process. It's non-certification course, but it does give high density tools and techniques in a short amount of time frame to improve your capability. So my challenge to you is, take these ideas and apply them and stop wasting your resources. How you can do that is we have a starter kit that could help you. Here's a web link that you could jump out and take a look. We've got metrics and educational courses and methods to help you get started. And just to wrap up here, my company specializes in helping you increase customer value by minimizing waste through continual improvement of products and services, and love to help you. And now I'm going to wrap it up and do Q&A. So I'm going to flip over and look at some of the questions that came in while we were presenting here. So the first one is, what tools do you recommend to detail incidents, diagnose, repair, and monitor the whole process? So tools to do that. First of all, there's many incident management systems that are out there today as tool sets. Heat, Remedy, ServiceNow, HP Service Manager, IBM has a system. Like there's a bazillion tools. These ones have in them already, in a lot of cases, the ability to have a workflow in which you can track things as they progress through the stages. Now, the workflow is very interesting because as you change from states, like, and my workflow is very simple. Remember, it was just 4 stages: the registration, diagnosis, repairing, and restoring. If those were workflow stages that you could track people through, you could actually track how much time people spend in those particular areas. These tools also have a lot of good capability to produce metrics automatically and be able to do that. So that would be my number 1 pick, is looking at those tool sets. We also have other tools as well. In Lean, we take you through a whole series of techniques. Lean takes very good advantage of Six Sigma principles. And when we do our training, we spend a lot of time in Six Sigma showing you how to analyze and look for waste within your process and identify those areas using Six Sigma techniques. So those are other tools as well and techniques. Just one other question. The link provided for pre-registration said the webinar was canceled. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm new to I'm new to Bright Talk, and I pressed the wrong button when I had to re-register myself. So sorry about that glitch. Okay, well, that wraps up our session for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I got one more question. Currently, our organization does not follow an ITIL methodology, meaning no true level 1 and escalation process nor measuring. Before implementing continuous improvement lean measures, should we fix our process first? Well, as you saw with Ontario government, we did it in parallel. We started measuring right up front, and the purpose of that was that we had a baseline, and the baseline allowed us to take on a couple of services that we used to show success early. And there's a whole principle and thinking here that you want to learn early, fail often, and learn from your mistakes. So the whole measurement piece is extremely important to do right up front in parallel with this, so that you can learn from your mistakes and fine-tune this as you go. But also to use it to demonstrate that you are making progress and you're showing value being generated, because that's what's going to get you the recognition from your senior management and buy-in and adoption. And that's extremely important to get your management to support you and all the stakeholders in this particular area. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, no more questions came in, so thank you again, and I enjoyed this and hope to talk to you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.